You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, okay, this is Michelle, as you probably know because you just clicked play. If you have not listened to last week's episode, I never normally do this, but I think it would be really helpful in context for this week's episode. And for the next couple episodes, actually. It would be great if you could go along in chronological order. We're going to be talking about the 12 steps. Now, normally I choose not to go into specifics about what I think your loved one needs to do to get sober. That's not my area of expertise. I think that involves a lot of like one-on-one specific treatment plans. My intention is to help you all who love someone struggling with addiction. And also to go over the 12 steps. It's not an endorsement, nor is it a criticism of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where the 12 steps stems from. Two founders, both by the name of Bill and Bill, actually founded Alcoholics Anonymous and wrote this book. It's called the Blue Book. It's not really called the Blue Book, but that's what people in the recovery community refer to it as because it's got a blue cover. And it's a smaller book, and it basically covers the 12 steps. And Bill and Bill were both alcoholics, and found this kind of way, these core steps to help them get sober. And so then they started small groups. And it's a very Christian-based treatment plan. And that's why I'm kind of sensitive to the fact that there are so many people in our community that come from all different backgrounds, all over the world, with all different faiths. So I'm using these 12 steps definitely not as a way to say, this is it. This is what your loved one needs to do to get sober. As I mentioned in the last podcast, the success rate of AA, just AA, being the primary treatment plan, doesn't have a great long-term success rate for recovery, meaning no relapses, just sober forever. But I do know some people that it very much get tons out of AA, enjoy it. It's really helped them. And so I am certainly not criticizing. Look, I think if it has a success rate of one person getting sober, it should be advertised to people because one is better than none, right? And there is no I have not come up in my research of one program that has 100% success rate. And I just want to touch on that really quickly. For those of you that have spent time researching rehabilitation treatment plans or rehabilitation centers, I've done extensive research about this. I've talked to experts about this. There are hopefully laws that are coming into place, cracking down on rehab treatments centers that advertise a success rate. So if you go to a rehab's website, first of all, most rehab websites they're not like being upfront and honest that they are rehab websites. The way they do their websites is kind of sneaky, where they'll pack it with information about addiction and then offer for you to call a number. And you don't actually know you're calling a rehab. You think you're calling someone for help, but you don't actually know who. So that's a little shady, right? The second thing is that I've found, and more people are catching on to this, is I was actually a victim of this. The rehab that I sent my ex-husband to, the main reason why I sent it to him, you guys know I love research, so I'm incredibly thorough. They said their success rate was in the 90th percentile for long-term sobriety. And I couldn't find a lot of other rehabs that were advertising that rate of success. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the author of the man that started this recovery program wrote a book. And of course I read the book through and through and thought, this is very like cutting edge. It's not a 12-step paced program. It's an alternative. It's worked. The success rate is amazing. I'm going to gather the money, and it was extremely expensive. So I took out loans and asked family members to borrow cash to send him there. I'm sorry, that's my dog, you guys. My neighbors are mowing their lawn. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. So anyways, I sent him to this rehab, and then literally it was a 30-day program. And on day 28, I went out to visit him. And they allowed like family members to come in and see the types of treatments they were doing. And I met with all of his counselors and therapists, and it was very informative. And I have high respect for those individuals that were dedicating their lives to this. Most of them were actually recovered substance abusers themselves, which I thought was incredible. And while I was there at the rehab facility visiting, actually, I think it was CNN, came out, believe it or not, with a report on the rehab facility that I sent my husband, saying their success rate, advertising their success rate was bogus, that it wasn't true. And it was so weird sitting there in this room with my husband and all the other patients who have also raised quite a bit of money to be there, thinking that, this was like the answer. Finally, it arrived. Someone cracked the code to sobriety. And then watching the news as a group cut down and accuse the rehab facility we were at of fraud, and saying, and this is why. Apparently, the way they gather these statistics is someone that works for the rehab calls previous patients, and just asks them over the phone, have you had a relapse? Have you drank alcohol since you've left? And if that person answers no, which of course most people wouldn't, because they don't want to disappoint the rehab, they don't want to disappoint the person, or addiction is all about secrecy, right? I mean, you have to find ways to hide it, otherwise you won't get away with it. So you're asking these people and putting them in a very uncomfortable position, but there's no proof. And then if that person says yes, well, then they mark it as, okay, so there's no drug or alcohol tests required. They don't take a hair strand or pee in a cup or take a blood test to prove that they have not drank or used drugs or had a relapse. And so the rehab facility then says, okay, well, thanks for answering, and then claims it as, someone who's maintained their sobriety, whether they have proof of that or not. And also, the sample that they are taking from people are like minimal. So out of everyone that has graduated their program, let's say there's hundreds or thousands, they're maybe calling 12, or maybe they're calling more, but if the person doesn't answer, which a lot of times, look, you've left if you're relapsing or you're in the thick of your addiction, you're really not, you might not be inclined to answer the phone to your rehab place, your rehab counselor. So the samples of these studies are too small to claim that they have a 90 or 70 or higher success rate than they actually do. Now, if you look at a lot of the websites on these rehabs and they say those claims, look for an asterisk or look for a footnote. Look in the small print or the fine print. And if you are vetting a rehab, then this is a great question to ask. And then if they claim a number that doesn't sound reasonable to you, which I don't even know what that number would be, but small, because the average person takes 7 rehab visits in order for it to stick. So their numbers should be relatively, low. Even the most successful ones, if they were being totally honest, if ask them like, well, how did you arrive at that number? How is that statistic? How many people were asked? Was there any proof that what they were saying was correct and accurate? Those are questions when you're vetting rehabs that you really want to make sure before you hand over a significant amount of money, and also your loved one who's going to be living there. You want to make sure, they're going to be with reasonable, respectable, safe people who have the expertise, right? So that was a complete tangent and a side note about rehabs, but it is documented, and I'm so grateful that people are now discussing it. I think John Oliver, is that his name, John Oliver? That really funny comedian that covers news. I think that's his name. He did a whole segment on rehabs, and it was really eye-opening. I interviewed a man who was actually did a documentary on rehabs, and just how shady some of them are. And it's in this podcast, and we'll link to it in our show notes, and also we can put that in. From now on, we're going to be giving you guys free worksheets of our podcasts. If you want just a summary and you want like some questions or writing prompts, because I thought God, I give so much information in these, and then I want you guys to have access to that. It would be really handy to have a printout, right? So if you're interested, all you need to do is just subscribe to the newsletter, and you only need to do it once, and then you can get access to all of the free handouts. So we'll put the link to the episodes that I'm talking about of our podcast and John Oliver's show in there. And then we're also going to get back to these 12 steps. So we're going to also do a handout with all of the 12 steps. So again, just to reiterate, this isn't an endorsement of the 12 steps. This isn't an endorsement of AA, and it's not a criticism either. The purpose and the intention of bringing these steps to light is for me to help you understand that, like we discussed last week, loving someone that struggles with addiction can cause you to feel insane, right? It is a level of chaos and craziness that is not normal, which is why our community is so special and unique, because we actually get it, like for real. And we understand that when you love someone struggling with addiction, insanity is quite normal and becomes very normalized. Crazy making is like a weekly, daily, whatever, hourly thing. So it becomes, because crazy becomes normalized, I want to kind of shake it up a little bit and go, okay, guys, it can stay normal for you if that's what you want to, if that's okay with you. But I want to give you an idea of what loving someone that struggles with addiction that gets sober looks like. That's the intention behind this. It's to say, if they decide to get sober long term, this is what a healthy relationship with someone that struggles with addiction sounds, feels, and looks like. And also, this is what it doesn't look like. Because being crystal clear about our expectations is really important to gauge how we're mentally and emotionally and spiritually doing in our lives. If we don't understand what we want and what we need, how are we ever going to know if it's possible or if it's reasonable, right? So this is me coming in saying, these things are very reasonable for you to want. And in fact, the addiction community believes that these things are very reasonable for the behavior of a sober person. Does that make sense? So we covered step 1 and step 2 last week. And this week I'm going to try, let's see, what are we doing on time? We're 15 minutes in, or approximately 15 minutes in. So we're going to do step 3 and we might cover step 4. Now, I know this is going to get old hearing me say this, especially if we keep breaking down these steps, but the origins of Alcoholics Anonymous are in Christianity. They use higher power, like the word higher power, and then they use the word God. If that offends you, totally cool with that. Like, I'm not trying to push any type of religion on anyone at all. I'm just repeating the sentences that they said, but I'm going to also phrase it so that if that doesn't float your boat, you can put in any word you want or no word at all to replace the word God, okay? So for step 3, in the 12 steps, step 3 says, make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Okay, so I love this because it is sort of acknowledging like the way you understand God might be different from the way I understand God, right? Or I might not even understand God at all. So I think it's a very encompassing or more encompassing sentence. But the intention, I think, behind this step, and from what I've read in the Blue Book, which I just brushed up on and will link in our worksheet, is that the idea of surrendering, the idea of dependence on something greater than ourselves, which sounds really awesome to me. I don't know about you, but when I think about my life, I do like to, like we discussed last week, consider myself a powerful person that has autonomy over my life. But I also really enjoy the idea of believing in something that is greater than myself, that has my best interest at heart, that believes me, loves me, and wants the best for me. And I think that depending on something, or, for guidance or connection or clarity is nice, right? It's a gift. And so more importantly, what I think the third step is talking about, and I'm trying to be very ginger and careful with my words here, because the last thing I want to do in today's culture is offend anyone, is I think what they're trying to say is that a lot of times we think we get dependent on other people or other things to make us feel good. I know you and me have a tendency to typically look outside of ourselves for comfort or for assurance, rather than say, I like myself. I'm actually really like myself, which is a revolutionary thought. We look to other people to say, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like this dress? Do you like my hair? Do you like my weight? Do you like my income? Do you like my job? Do you like my kids? Do you like my home? Do you like whatever? Whatever it is, we turn outside. We either turn to people we know, who we compare ourselves to. We turn to our spouses. We turn to our enemies for approval or acceptance. We turn to celebrities or Instagram people, influencers, or whatever, our parents, whatever. And what I think step 3 is saying that is so refreshing is it's saying, let's not depend on anyone else for the direction of our life. It's okay I think it's okay for people, myself included, to ask opinions of others. But when it comes to us, you and me, depending on an unhealthy person, all right, because somebody that is still actively struggling with their addiction is not healthy. And that's not a hurtful statement to make. It's just the truth. It's the reality. And of course, we want them to get healthy, right? But if you and I place our self-esteem, our self-confidence, our worth in an unhealthy person, is that the best decision we can make? Or should we take that kind of dependence on them back? And I think the third step is a lot of speaking to people that struggle with addiction and their dependence on their addiction to make them feel better. They're dependent on the drugs or the alcohol or the pornography or the sex or whatever they're addicted to, the money or the gambling. They are dependent on those substances or those very unhealthy things to temporarily ease their pain. Remember, we talked about this a couple months ago about how really addiction is a lack of coping skills for previous trauma. That's one of the reasons why addicts become addicts, is because they don't have the emotional toolbox to handle the feelings that arise, the uncomfortable pain that has occurred in their life. They don't have the skills or strategies to do that. So they turn to a dependence on something other than themselves, or what AA likes to describe as a higher power, or fill in the blank, whatever you want to say it. And that becomes unhealthy. And that becomes a cycle, right, of coping that brings detrimental, terrible destruction in their lives and in your life. So step 3 to me is about everyone checking themselves, which actually is a little bit of step 4, and saying, okay, where am I placing my dependence? What things in my life am I dependent on to make me feel good? Like, I'll just be totally honest with you guys. Right now, if I were to ask myself that question, because I'm asking you that question, so if you're going to be honest with me, I will be honest with you, I would say, and I'm not judging myself for this, I don't even know if this is a bad thing, but I certainly look at food as a way to, as a dependent. If I want to give myself something to look forward to, I know I'm going to be visiting the freezer later on in the evening and pulling out that ice cream. Is that a bad thing? No, I don't think it is. For me, I don't know about anyone else, and I'm not here to judge anyone else, but I certainly would say that's a dependence I have. So ask yourself that question. Ask yourself, is there anything that you're dependent on that's good or bad? And then as far as wanting somebody, what does it look like when you're married to somebody who's in recovery? Step 3 would be they would understand that all those things that they are dependent to, whatever they are, drugs, alcohol, all of it, the list, that those things serve as things that they have become dependent on, and that they need to remove the dependence from those things. Does that make sense? That's at least my take on step 3. And again, I am riffing here. So if you want, I love to do research. So there's a book that talks about the steps as far as coming at it from a codependence point of view. I own it. I got through half of it, but I like and enjoy the author. Her name is Melanie Beattie. She has a very popular book called Codependent No More. And I went on the Amazon to look it up for you so we can add it to that worksheet. And you guys, I had no idea. Apparently there's like many books from many different authors called Codependent No More, which I didn't think was legal. I didn't know you could do that. I thought once you own, like, the copywriting laws allowed you to take ownership of that title. But make sure if you do decide to order this book by Melanie Beattie, it's by Melanie Beattie. And so it's Codependent No More, or she wrote a 12 steps book. I'm trying to look for it. I can't find it, but it's basically like, you'll know when you see it. It's called 12 Steps for Codependence. And that's a good place if you want to go even further into detail. This podcast, I try to limit it to around 30 minutes if you want more research there. And then we'll link up the blue book as well for AA. So did I just cover, what did I do? Oh no, I only covered one step. You guys, we're going to get through this, I promise. Okay, so let's do step 4. Let's just stretch it out a little bit. All right, step 4 is one of my favorite steps. I love this step because I believe in it so much. And I know you guys will too, because you're here. So step 4 is make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So you make a searching and fearless, I love those words, moral inventory of ourselves. So if your loved one is trying to get sober or actively sober, what does this look like? It looks like, to me, that they will come to you and say, I have spent some time alone thinking about this, and this is the truth. Or I have spent some time talking to my sponsor, and I realized the reason why I do this is because of this. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to do that moving forward. Or it sounds something like, you know what? In part of my recovery, I realized that I've been negligent in this area and that I really need to improve. Or it looks like I went to therapy and I realized I need a better way to struggle with anger. I have a lot of repressed anger. Or something along these lines. It looks like, and you guys have probably experienced this, where your loved one has been like so honest with you and you want to rejoice in your heart because you're so grateful for honesty because you feel like that word does not apply to your life. There's so much lying and manipulation going on that you're desperate for someone like, I think of like walking through the desert where you're just like desperate for water. That's how I think loving someone struggling with addiction feels like. You're just desperate for truth. You'll take anything. Just give me the truth. No matter how hard it is to hear, I just want to know that you spiked your drink with vodka. Just tell me. I can taste it in the cup. There is vodka in there. And they're looking at you going, no, there's not. You're crazy. And you start to think, gosh, am I? Is this really the taste of Diet Coke? Is this what Diet Coke tastes like now? Maybe I am. You just want the truth. And for me, I think step 3, when you're married to someone struggling with addiction, is it's truth. It's honesty. It's finally saying, having the courage to go, step 4. With step 4, it's truth. It's being courageous enough to own it and go, I'm really struggling. And The beautiful part about step 4 is that if our loved ones actually did this, we would love them so hard. We would accept them and welcome them and go, thank you so much. This gives me so much hope and so much faith in you, because I know things are really changing because you're willing to be honest with me and yourself. Most importantly, we want our loved ones to be honest with themselves, right? That's the key, because how can you possibly change anything if you're not willing to admit the truth? And how can you truly feel connection with someone if they're not being honest with you? If they have a history of lying, how can you feel connected? That's why, you guys probably been in the situation where you meet another woman, and maybe you've never met her before, but she's just so transparent, and you're like, yes, thank you. You feel instantly connected to somebody who's willing to be real with you and say I don't have anything together, or I remember going to this party across the street in my old house, and I don't do parties because I just, they just make me feel awkward. But my husband was like, no, we got to go out and meet people because that's what we do, and we're new to the neighborhood. So I literally forced myself, but every step I was like, I hate this. And I didn't hate the people. I just didn't want to go make small talk. And so I went to this party and I was dying, and I was like, okay, my eyes were glazed. I was trying to laugh, but I was laughing too hard. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I was drinking my drink too fast because I didn't know, I was just I'm just going to keep drinking. Anyways, I don't know if it was alcohol or not. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But the point is, right towards the end, I ran into the host of the party who I'd never met before. And she was like, oh God, I hate these things. My husband's the extrovert. He loves these things. And so I just have to we agree to do only a couple of them a year just to appease him. And as soon as she said that to me. And I think I was like, oh, you are my people. You are my person. I'm like, me too. I don't like being here. And we both had this brutally honest conversation. She didn't want me there, and I didn't want to be there. And we bonded over that tremendously. We actually exchanged phone numbers because it was two introverts admitting the truth. So that's what made me feel connected to her, right? And I think that is what makes you feel connected in your marriage or your relationship, is when people are truthfully honest, even if it's awkward or uncomfortable or makes them look bad. Or I could have easily been in that party so offended that she said this to me. But I was like, no, thank you. Yes, let's I'm just going to step out now and go because you just gave me permission and you don't want me here anyways. So it was wonderful. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying step 4, making a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves, really is refreshing and honest and real. And are we going to hear things that we don't want to hear that will break our heart? Absolutely. Yeah, of course, because part of us really has been hanging on to maybe a denial that things are as bad as they are. And so when the bubble bursts, it always kind of is devastating. But I think that the devastation, there's hope soon afterwards, kind of like the phoenix rising, right? The phoenix rising from the ashes. You can work with that. You can work with the truth. You can build upon it, or you can choose to leave it behind, right? And start over. But what you can't work with is denial. And you cannot work with lies. And you cannot work with somebody who's not willing to take accountability and responsibility for their behavior. That you cannot work. You can't make progress in that relationship. You can make progress on your own with yourself by taking by searching and taking moral inventory of yourself, that's always a possibility. We're not powerless over this disease. You don't just have to sit there and wait for him to get honest with you in order to start to feel better. I think feeling better also means being honest with yourself. And I ran into this a lot when I was running small groups in the addiction world, which is there were some women there that were absolutely like ready to own all of their life and all of their marriage and relationships. They were there ready to own their anger over loving someone with addiction. They were there ready to own the fact that their husband had been unfaithful. They were ready to own the fact that like their finances were in a not so great of a place, right? That they didn't know how they were going to pay their bills. I was one of those women. But then you also had the women that were shoving things down, that were willing to say, you know, it's sort of bad, but it's not that bad. Like there was always a couple women in the room that were like really trying hard to make themselves look or sound better than the other women in the room. And it wasn't because they were trying to be jerks at all. It honestly wasn't even about judging other women. It was more out of absolute fear of admitting how bad things really were. Because if you take fearless inventory of your life, where does that leave you? How does that make you feel? If you truly look at all of the areas in your life that are broken or could be, I don't want to say better, but like you look at the hard truth, it might not, you might look at yourself and go, what am I still doing here? Why am I still holding on to this? And I always ask you guys questions, and then I always am willing to do it with you because I don't want to ask anything of you that I'm not willing to do myself. So when I truly believe that is the reason why I did not know that my husband was cheating on me our entire marriage. How could I have not? I'm a very smart person. But I think that I was not willing to see what I was going on in front of me. I was not willing to be fully, to take moral inventory, to go all the way there. Because all the way there, I knew for me that would be my breaking point. I knew if he was cheating on me, then I would have to get divorced. And I wasn't ready to leave. I still wanted to believe in us and our family and our marriage. And so I knew that if I actually dug just a little bit, I would be able to see the truth, and that would mean taking action. So part of this recovery is, again, we go back, let's bring it back to the beginning, which is part of this recovery is you knowing that you deserve the truth all the time, 100%. You do. And that's what it takes to make a really healthy marriage, is honesty. And if you love someone struggling with addiction, a good way to gauge if they are on the right path to sobriety is to say, how honest are they being? Are they consistently honest with you, even when it doesn't sound or look good? Or are they willing to, are they still lying? And I'm not going to mention the celebrities' names because I don't believe in that. But there was a celebrity that has struggled with addiction for a very long time. They've been sober for an extremely long amount of time, which is amazing. And they're married and they have 2 kids. And this celebrity said they had had a relapse. And I was reading an interview of the wife, and the wife was saying, I know that he's trying because he purchased himself a drug and alcohol test, brought it into the house, gave it to me, and said, you may use this on me anytime you want to, and I will do it, no matter what. You won't hear any problems from me. And this is just so that I can be held accountable and so you can have peace of mind. And I'm paraphrasing that, but that is a man that is on his way to sobriety. That is a guy who wants to be sober no matter what. And that right there is so moving and is such accountability. And so that's honesty, right? And that's what she deserved, and and he knew that. And I just found that story just incredibly touching. So that's what step 4 looks like. And also for us, because we always want to bring it back to us, this is not a podcast about them. We need to do step 4 too, guys. Like, let's continue to do that. You guys, I know, are the type of community where you want to know. You want to know what to do. You're not buying the whole helpless act. So let's start with that. Let's start with just taking a really hard look at the truth. Let's be the women in the group that go in and just lay it out there on the line, all of it, dirty laundry, everything, every ugly thing that we actually think is ugly. That's not. It's actually will serve your life and it will turn into such beautiful things eventually. All the pain, all the struggles. Let's just be real, right? So in the worksheet this week, I want you guys to, if you can, or if you'd like, answer the questions that we ask you that will help you take moral inventory of your life. And then if you want to burn it, burn it. Like, you don't need to keep it. You don't need to make some binder. You don't need to, if you don't want to. Burn it if you're scared of anyone finding it. But I think that will be a great step to your recovery too. Okay, so next week we will go over 5 and 6. Talk to you later. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.